A year ago, I made a video warning the Alberta separatists to not fall into the referendum trap. I tried to warn them that the process is one giant control mechanism and that even if they did everything perfectly, the state can easily find something wrong with their procedures. My position was that it was never going to be fair and they shouldn't communicate that their natural rights are negotiable by participating and legitimizing the process. A few weeks ago, Alberta separatists hit exactly the legal roadblock I warned about. The court squashed the referendum petition, ruling that the provincial government had failed in its constitutional duty to consult First Nations. I'll get to that in a minute. The reason why I knew I had to warn them was because Canadians are extremely prone to thinking that democratic procedures are best, even when the objective is to cast off the oppression of government. What could be more Canadian than asking for your independence? For another example, if you claim that your free speech rights were violated, many Canadians will correct you by saying the Charter doesn't outline speech as a right. And they actually think they're making a good point saying that. At the root of this is a kind of legal positivism, the idea that morality and legitimacy are determined by whatever legislation declares to be acceptable. But if legality becomes morality, then there is no independent standard left to judge power. The state simply outlines what is permissible and people rationalize it after the fact. History is full of governments using legal authority to justify censorship, coercion, dispossession, segregation, internment, forced relocation, and countless other abuses. The whole point of having a moral standard independent of the state is so that legality itself can be criticized. Otherwise, almost anything can be justified as long as the right institution signs off on it. When positive law becomes the basis of reality, freedom only exists to the extent Ottawa permits it. Here's a question. If the Constitution explicitly prohibited separation referendums, would these same people suddenly say Alberta simply cannot leave at all? If self-determination depends entirely on permission from existing institutions, then by that logic, many independence movements throughout history would have been illegitimate at the moment they were conceived. The go-to line for Canadians trying to dismiss Alberta separation, including Justice Leonard, has become, "It's treaty land." Funny how quickly the argument shifted once pretending the movement wasn't popular enough stopped working. The treaty land objection is especially strange because it reveals how inconsistent their underlying theory of property is. We're told the people living on the land do not have a sufficient claim to politically separate from Ottawa, yet somehow a collective claim mediated through chiefs is considered decisive. So apparently Ottawa having authority over people and land is at least questionable, but this historical collective claim overrides the wishes of millions of people currently living there and is ironclad and somehow unquestionable. Being collectivists, maybe they think we all sign these agreements in some national sense, but in that case, do they not realize leaving a country means you are no longer a part of the nation that signed that agreement? Or do they think that other nations are somehow bound by these internal rules? Or maybe it's just racism. After all, many leftists like to tell lies about Native communities being communist. So maybe they think that when their government signed something, that was like all the Native people signed it, and not just their rulers. Maybe to liberals, Aboriginal humans are intrinsically a hive mind. I would genuinely love to hear what the property ethic is here. How is the native claim fundamentally different? Ottawa claims authority on behalf of a people, separatists claim authority on behalf of a people, chiefs claim authority on behalf of a people. So by what principle is one legitimate and another not? From a consistent property rights perspective, ownership comes from first appropriation, meaning you actually transform the land, homesteading it, or you make a voluntary exchange for it. Real property claims do not come from a bunch of guys sitting around a table drawing lines on a map. A family living on land they settled or traded for does not owe their property to Ottawa simply because Ottawa governs them, nor is it obvious why they would owe political allegiance to some native collectivist claim they never consented to regardless of their ethnicity. Critics of Alberta separation often speak as though treaty land settles the discussion, but political agreements can be renegotiated if they need to be, or even better, they can be ignored altogether as they should be. They never had individual consent. Albertans never signed anything. The real question is whether legitimacy comes from consent and it's the people violating freedom of association who bear the onus to justify it, or whether morality is simply whatever Ottawa says it is. Preventing secession is the same as conquest. It's still aggression and it still cannot ever be justified. The exact procedural trap I warned about is now front and center. The government did exactly what states always do. It constructed a reason why freedom has to wait for permission.